just because then everyone's
est moins évident. Il suffit d'appuyer sur le bouton d'électricité dessus le bouton, puis l'unité de l'énergie nucléaire qui sort à bon marché, qui est abondante, qui a des prix faibles. Donc forcément, ça joue certainement sur l'aspect de la volonté locale à ce niveau-là. Ça a une forme, quelque part, d'inertie au changement. Par contre, quels seraient les avantages de l'éolien citoyen? Comment est-ce que ça pourrait se développer davantage? D'ailleurs, première chose, je pense que c'est l'impact que ça peut avoir sur l'acceptabilité sociale des projets. Une des premières choses que me disaient les répondants, un des gros problèmes du manque d'acceptabilité sociale qu'on rencontre en France, c'est vraiment ça concerne l'éolien industriel finalement, qui donne un peu une mauvaise image à l'éolien. Donc par exemple, c'est aussi une cause de l'effriment du soutien pour l'éolien de la part du mouvement écologiste, au fur et à mesure avec les années. Il y a eu moins de soutien de la part du mouvement écologiste, et ça s'explique en particulier par ce peu de développement de l'éolien citoyen. Je peux vous donner une petite citation qui illustre très bien cette problématique soulevée au niveau local.
Les coopératives en énergie aussi qui sont historiques, on va voir un petit peu avec, on va faire un lien avec ce que vient de dire Évariste. Et enfin, ce dont je m'occupe tout particulièrement sont les coopératives en énergie renouvelable. À ce niveau-là, je vais insister beaucoup sur l'émergence des coop en énergie renouvelable, qu'est-ce qui a été le facteur déclencheur qui a fait en sorte qu'au Québec, ce type de modèle a été développé. Je vais vous en fournir quelques exemples pour vous donner un petit peu... Je parle trop vite? Oui. Ok. Dommage. Ensuite, je vais vous donner quelques exemples en fait, pour essayer de vous donner un peu un ordre d'idée de ce qui peut être fait. Il y a beaucoup de coopératives qui sont actives dans le domaine de l'éolien, mais pas uniquement. On voit que suite au premier appel d'offres, il y a certaines coopératives qui ont changé un peu leur fusil d'épaule et qui essayent maintenant de développer d'autres types d'énergie. Les facteurs de réussite, pourquoi est-ce qu'un projet coopératif en énergie renouvelable fonctionne ou ne fonctionne pas? Donc justement les contraintes et les défis, voir un petit peu pourquoi est-ce qu'il y a plein de projets qui peuvent ne pas décoller. Et enfin, en dernier lieu, je vous donnerai certaines conclusions et des perspectives d'avenir pour le modèle coop et les énergies renouvelables. Est-ce que c'est correct?
When the tenders went out, was that from hydro to that? It was tendering for development of new projects 10 years ago?
Hydro-Québec, si je comprends bien, Hydro-Québec avait une division.
J'espère que j'ai bien compris la question. Hydro-Québec, il y a une dizaine d'années, avait une division effectivement éolien et d'autres divisions de développement des autres types d'énergie, notamment gaz et pétrole. La volonté politique qui a été mise en place après, ça a été de concentrer toutes les ressources au Québec sur les méga projets hydroélectriques et rien d'autre. La division éolienne a été coupée complètement, la division gaz et pétrole a été coupée complètement, et même les micro-projets, on parle de 50 MW au niveau des micro-centrales hydroélectriques, ont été coupés. Donc c'était vraiment, on se concentre sur faire les méga projets hydroélectriques, tout le reste des types des énergies, c'est passé par appel d'offres et c'est privatisé par la banque.
Project that JJ will be speaking afterwards, just really looking at how can we grow this is an emerging new sector within the co-op movement, and how can we grow it and share experiences. So just very briefly, since we were in the presentation yesterday, I spoke about, I gave an overview of what's happening across Canada around where a lot of the cooperatives also doing a short comparison with Europe. So Trek, as I mentioned, is an incubator and builder. Our relationship with the co-ops that we establish is that we do the management for those co-ops, the member management, administrative services. And also, basically what we're trying to create within Trek is a service model that allows the co-op to not have any staff. So to essentially reduce the overheads of the co-op and to retain all of those overhead costs within a central organization that goes on and helps other groups. So this is a model that we're in the process of figuring out. We have a couple of clients. So Windshare is our first project. It's the wind turbine down at Exhibition Place. It's a cooperative that was formed in 2002. We launched SilverShare last year. We're also working with a local co-op in Toronto called ZooShare that is building a biogas project on the Toronto Zoo, and we're providing services And we're also working on developing a toolkit that can be used by other groups to help facilitate their projects. Very groups are not yet at that stage because they're still thinking of early startup. And so that's one of the things that we've been trying to communicate. It just lists some of the different costs. So both on the project side and on the project side, that would be common to what the private sector is experiencing. On the co-op side, I think we have a number of unique expenses that people don't appreciate. And in part, I think one of the things we haven't really even grappled with is how do you engage your members for a 20-year period around a project that really is just giving them, it's not even giving them electricity, it's really just an investment. And so, this whole idea of communications is an interesting challenge that we're facing. And you see that managing a windshare membership, it's hard to get 20 people out to an AGM because there isn't really a whole lot to say except your turbine generated this much over the last year. And so I think we'll definitely see that as a challenge going forward.
There is a cooperative difference in alternative energy and what are the challenges. So I'll go fairly quickly through this, but really I want to focus on the last point, the value difference and the way forward for alternative energy production by forwarding what I think is a real problem for cooperative practice in theory in this new developing field. And taking a step back, and some of it was mentioned in the earlier presentations, about what's driving this policy, is creating alternative energy. What are the problems when co-ops participate in this kind of activity, and specifically the role of the state or policy creation in controlling, or as I say later, making co-ops creatures of the state. And we often look at, say, the Soviet Union or other places and say, oh, this is terrible when the state creates co-ops and it's very bad for practice, but we don't critically reflect on our own context in the West about how much policy is directing particular activities and co-op structures and practices. So really what I want to get at, and I avoided talking about Quebec or France in this presentation because I knew we had these two other speakers, but I think it applies there as well, is that there's a general sense that alternative energy is a good thing and a general sense that co-ops will be successful. And certainly when Judith and I started this research, that was my assumption, probably less so hers, but it was an assumption. But what really has struck me over the last couple of years is that assumption was based on the idea that co-ops are effective market agents. Why have capitalized on it? And it's not that they can't be or they won't be, but the role of the state and the public policy, specifically outside of the context of the FIT program, I don't think has been talked about enough in the literature or thought about enough. And I'm trying to use alternative energy to think about that, but the cooperative sector more generally. And again, we get into this question of, is there a cooperative difference? If there is it positive or is it negative? Or, as I'll tip my hand, I think it's a bit of both. So I want to get us to think about that in this context. So the general understanding of the co-op difference, and I think it's really actually an interesting question because it's a value proposition for a lot of people. We don't often think of concretizing the co-op difference. What exactly does it mean on the ground? But generally, it's the idea that co-ops are businesses done differently, that they have a social focus, a democratic content, and a concern for community. And I'm going to return to these themes in alternative energy at the end to try and pick up how I think that they can be realized in alternative energy. But we also don't think a lot about what are the factors that allow that cooperative difference to exist. And one of the assumptions is, I think we need to be critical about it, is that it's voluntaristic, meaning that as long as the members pull together and do it right, it's going to happen. And I think that that's a dangerous assumption to make because it can lead to member burnout or problems. But we also don't operate freely in the world to do whatever we want to do, as much as we might want to think that we are that way. There are real structural issues. And here I'm bringing in sociology and political science into the conversation.
We have 10 minutes before the next session starts.
As far as demand, I guess, multiple benefits. Just the fact that it is a unit, and the fact that it's supposed to unilaterally happen to the we're absolutely not going to stop paying negative production. So the fact that it's renewable energy, the fact that it's owned by citizens who want to not vote for fees for wallets, you know? Do you feel that it's not a demonstrable benefit? Like, I would just well up with pride. I live on the wrong side of the Ottawa River to buy in. But that's not enough of a demonstrable benefit for people to just well up with pride.
Personally, I don't think it is. Because I actually don't think that technology, solar is a different thing. I think solar actually is a much more, I can't get into all the details in that quick time, but has a much more democratic potential to it than the turbines. But I'm not actually sure, and I've looked through the literature, that a wind turbine ultimately creates a huge environmental benefit. I don't think that it creates the social benefits that co-ops are also supposed to bring. And I think the desire to buy with your wallet environmental change, to me, I was in the environmental movement a long time ago. That kind of bought environmental change never works, and I think we've forgotten why we were critical of that in the 80s and in the 90s. It needs actually fundamental transformation of how we live. So a wind turbine does nothing to tell me to do the best thing possible for the environment, which is to consume less. In fact, it mitigates and makes me feel better about consuming more, because now I can buy in coal-fired power, so I can run my lights all day long, and it's just wind turbines. There hasn't been a very good analysis of the whole production process of wind turbines, most of which are coming from other places that aren't being developed here yet, and the environmental cost of those, plus the breakdown component and waste from turbines. When I was in Scotland, they were showing this huge field, and they said all of those are going to be gone in 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they go?
Well, they're made of steel, they're actually.
Yes, I got that, and I said, so who's going to recycle those things?
And birds.
I don't know, I have to disagree with you. I think that,
Kills birds.
I mean, what we're talking about is an energy transition to a renewable energy future. I actually think that in Ontario in particular, what's motivating the Green Energy Act is in part the commitment by the Liberal government to get off coal. Now, we're closer to that target than ever, not because of renewable energy necessarily, but because of the recession. But at the same time, that was the impetus for, among other things, for introducing the Green Energy Act, trying out a feed there. So I don't think it's as easy as to say, well, we're just buying, it's just a monetary thing to buy ourselves out of the environmental crisis. I actually think the fact that we're generating green, electricity from renewable energy is one of the more concrete things you can do with your money, which is unlike, buying,
Mutual fund, look at the coal company, it shuts off their lights on that. What's that?
Question from Fiona.
How do they expect not a life cycle, but institutional membership involvement though? At the very beginning, it's very intensive, there's lots of involvement, everyone's excited, a core group of people, some burn out, but people move in and out of the periphery. And then as it goes along, there's less member involvement naturally because there isn't as much development work happening as well. Now, I guess the trick is being people somewhat involved, especially if you want to expand. But isn't there a natural progression of member involvement anyway? So you're not going to have your 400 Windshare members constantly at the pulse of Windshare because it's up, it's running, mostly, and it's doing its thing. So. Is there an expectation that a member would be constantly involved, right, all the way along?
But then my only argument that I'm trying to say is that why not do community power? This is the context of the co-op difference, right? That's all I'm trying to say.
I have a question about coupling the solar or alternative energy models to PRDs, and in particular to PRDs that are cooperatively owned. Has there been any exploration about that?
Can you explain
And are
PRD?
planned residential development?
For what?
A planned residential development would be a subsection, a subdivision, and if you have a cooperative, or if you are, as is the case in some parts of New England and in USA, where they're taking manufactured home parks and converting those into planned residential developments, and have the opportunity to build in with the financing the introduction of alternative energy infrastructure Is this something that state policy could incentivize and that would lend financing for the two?
Sure. But really briefly, then you've got state-directed cooperative development. If we're talking about co-ops, the energy thing, Judith and I can disagree all day long, but it's really the question that we're trying to focus on here, at least, is the co-op form providing difference in alternative energy? And that's an interesting example of where, in actual fact, if you believe in that this type of model reduces energy consumption or is better for the environment ultimately or whatever, you've got to look at whether or not this model is a good one. And that's an example where the state would be much better, municipal government, just saying every single development LEED certification requires solar panels. I don't care who does it, but then where's the co-op difference?
So we are out of time. We do have the contact information for the consent just to agree.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, I'm impressed at how many people are here for our session as the last one, so welcome. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to be with you the last few days. I'm a senior vice president with Affinity Credit Union, and I'm responsible for governance and community development. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Affinity, what we do, and some of the things that are important to us in the communities that we serve. And since I have some Affinity members in the audience today, they'll keep me honest for you. Page down? Okay, perfect. Okay. So, I'm very passionate about Affinity, so when my time is up, Jessica might have to wrestle me out. But I'm going to tell you as much as I can about Affinity in the few minutes that we have together. To talk about who we are, our unique governance, which I believe connects us to our membership, and the value drivers that are important to us in priority areas. So who is Affinity? We're one of the largest credit unions in Saskatchewan and one of the top 10 in Canada based on asset size. We have more than 95,000 members. We have a presence in 44 branches in 37 communities across the province, and we employ more than 600 people. Our governance system is unique in that we have over 75 elected officials. So these are people that serve at the request of being elected by the members. Our focus is certainly to connect and engage with our membership. And so this is how our governance works. Members elect to district councils, and those district councils appoint to the board of directors, which is a 15-person board. There are 9 district councils throughout the province. One of those councils is entirely a First Nations district, and we have 2 First Nations chiefs that sit and serve as directors on our board. They all have staggered 3-year terms, so that we don't have a number of people from one district terms expiring with a lot of without continuity. I show you this picture because it's just a graphic of the province of Saskatchewan, so you can see that we have a lot of geography to cover between our branches, but 50% of our members are rural and 50% of our members are urban. We report back to our members in each of the districts through what we call community impact statements. They're like little report cards, and they report back to the members in each of the districts about what we did during the year, and we give them statistical data in terms of what we've done throughout those districts. So very clear reporting back, our effort at being transparent to our members, and our members just love these. We cannot keep them in the branches or on our website. We're always being called for them. One of the unique things about our governance is that the delegates that are elected by the member, they truly are the voice of the member. And we put a lot of meat in their job description, which means that they are not only active and engaged in our credit union, they are very much the face of the credit union in our communities, as well as our staff are. So they actively should we have a vacancy on the board. They also serve on board committees. So all of our committees, with the exception of audit and risk, are also filled with delegates that come right out of the districts. Affinity feels that it's a great training ground for our delegates. All of our delegates are trained through the Credit Union Director Achievement Program. And we're very clear up front that our mandate is we expect them to be committed and informed about their credit union. Part of that is education. And for us, we have a ready supply, I guess, of directors that could step in should they need to by doing that. They have input to the board to enhance member service and community commitment. They oversee the nomination and election process, and they are the final decision on potential merger partners. So if we went to our delegates and we said that XYZ Credit Union wishes to merge with us, and we've met with them, we've done the due diligence, and we're recommending that, if they said no, it would be their decision to say no. So they are truly the decision maker and partner. And they're involved with, if we change a branch manager in their district, they're involved in the selection process. Because what we know is the fit has to be there. And they have to feel very comfortable with their branch managers, and they have to have a relationship. So they're part of that process. Our measure of success is that our members are engaged and active, and they're informed, and that elected officials are providing local leadership and are actively engaged. So as I said, the elected officials are expected to be out and about in their communities, and there are. We have what I call coffee nights. I'm not sure that's the right term for them, but we invite members to come out to the local coffee shop, and we sit there, the chairs are put around, and we sit in the middle, and my delegate sits there with me, or whoever, the CEO comes with me, and we talk to our members and we find out what's on their mind. We do that often throughout the year. We're people driven. I always say that we provide a full range of financial products, and who we are is really a community builder, and that's how we define ourselves. This is just a picture of me delivering a check to Habitat for Humanity. So our criteria under community development are community needs which are less likely to get support elsewhere. I always talk to my staff about pretty charities, the pretty ones that are easy to get behind. It's the ones that are less likely to get support elsewhere but are really needed in the community. Those are the ones that we look for. And that we try to adopt diversity such that most members would support most of the things we do. With 95,000 members, we are not going to make everyone happy all the time. But we do try to isolate things that will be appealing to most of our membership all the time. We set aside 6% of our pre-tax, pre-patronage profits to be spent right back in the local communities that we serve. So we're almost $3 billion. So we spend, slightly over $500,000 right back into the communities every year. I'm going to talk a bit about our community spirit and our staff philanthropy, because that's been an important piece of this growth as well. We have 6 priority areas in community development, that being affordable housing, community economic development in our districts. We talk about youth with opportunities or disadvantaged youth, health promotion, education, and environment. In our Community Spirit Fund, every staff member and every elected official of Affinity gets $200 every year to put in something that they are passionate about in their community. And I tease them. I tell them that it can't be immoral or illegal, but almost anything else I'll cut the check for. And so last year we had, as well as the $200 per staff, and I'll show you those totals in a second, we had almost 25,000 volunteer hours from our staff in local communities. That was during business hours. We very much encourage them to be part of the fabric of the community and to be involved, and they love it. So last year we had 533 donations to 323 district organizations totaling $106,000. It runs anywhere between $106,000 and $115,000 usually every year that the staff and the elected officials give back to their communities. You can see that about 80% of the staff and 80% of the elected officials take advantage of this. Why the other 20% does, I do not know. but there's always a little bit of give and take there. Last year, we received the Communitas Award. This is an international award for leadership in community, and it talks about people serving people. And I think that truly reflects what Affinity does. We try to partner in powerful partnerships wherever we can, because we feel if we leave a partnership or we get behind something that's happening in the community, the likelihood of other organizations also supporting that community come on side and make that more powerful. So we have partnerships from Quint Development, which is a housing co-op, to Saskatoon Housing's partnership, to Habitat for Humanity, local builders, City of Saskatoon, the province of Saskatchewan, and the federal government. Our Home Start program is a partnership with the City of Saskatoon, and it was truly groundbreaking in terms of how the city thought about affordable housing. And we met with them over a period of time, and in this program,
Okay, so now you see why we love Affinity. I don't even want to give my presentation. Now it looks like we're not up to par with them. So I think what maybe you don't know, or maybe you do know, is the three of us are related. We're all working on the same project, which is to study the impact of credit unions. Affinity is our major example for the moment. We also are working with another smaller credit union called Advantage, and our goal is to actually work province-wide with all the credit unions and eventually nationwide if we can get a really good instrument. Lou and I were just sitting here saying our instrument so far doesn't do anywhere near the justice of what Affinity is actually doing, so I'm even more nervous than ever trying to explain to what we are doing, because it feels like we're doing nothing. But anyway, we've been working on this for several years, so we're obviously doing something. But whether we're really able yet to capture in a good measure that's going to really get her people and other people really feeling like they understand all the different things that the credit union, especially one like Affinity, does, we're not quite there yet. But anyway, we did, I'm supposed to talk about our efforts to look through the literature and to come up with some notion of what our indicators and measures should be, and then Lou is actually going to talk more about what measures we ended up with and what we've learned so far. And then she'll also lament about that we're nowhere near where we wish we were. We have 2 more years, so we'll be there. 2 more years, we'll be there. So we did look at financial analysis, sustainability reporting, the balanced scorecards, and strategy mappings. Have a way to capture the leadership that got developed. Now we can count how many of their delegates participated in those coffee meetings or something like that, but how are we going to count or notice or measure what other kind of leadership that developed? Do those delegates go home and say something differently to their children? Do they then run for the PTA president, right? We're trying to figure out how we then, so we've got the one level of being able to sort of count, calculate number. We've got all these delegates, we know they did these activities, but we don't quite know what those spillover effects are. We don't really have a good measure. Even when we start to try to ask it, we will get into that. It's hard for people to answer that on our surveys, right? To say, yeah, I went home and I told my daughter about this and now she wants to run for class president. Well, that's actually a big thing, but we can't capture that because sometimes I won't even think of answering that way on the questionnaire. Unless we can sit closely with everybody and say, but did you do this? But then you have to list them 10,000 things that you go home and do, right? You get the idea.
Well, just to do a bit of a recap, because just to help you, just to remind you, I guess, of how we got to where we are. We did start with a broad review of the literature, as Jessica said, and out of that we developed a set of quite a large, extensive set of indicators in the table, which is available, could be provided to you, that I thought maybe Jessica might throw a few of them up just to remind us what they were.
I thought you were doing that. Sorry. Oh, I did it this morning, actually.
Okay, this is her third presentation today. She's forgetting what she's been presented with. And so that was sort of our first crack at it. And then we thought, okay, this is what the literature is saying. This is what other people have been trying to do. Does it really make sense in the context of credit unions? So we started first with our smaller credit union, and smaller in terms, I guess, of geography and numbers of members, about 17 branch organizations as opposed to the 44 that Affinity has, still located in Saskatchewan, primarily rural, but in some large urban centers as well, and in some resort communities too, so some variation there. But striking in many ways in comparison to what Affinity is doing, and I would have to say that in terms of our province and across Canada, the work of Affinity is, you know, the bar is come up here as compared to many of the credit unions in the 100. You can look at it in a more pan-Canadian type of view, and I know that there are others who are similar to what Affinity is doing, but not many that would have the same level of engagement and in the variety of ways that Affinity does. So we have some variation in the credit unions that we're looking at, which we're also hoping is useful, because there's great variation across the country. Until, of course, that one day when there's one credit union left instead of the many that we have. In order to test its relevance to credit unions, these indicators, the relevance of these indicators to the various credit unions, we took it out initially to the smaller credit union, and we sat down, we generated a list of questions, and we sat down with managers and board members, and we said, this is what the literature says, the ways in which you should measure different types of activities. These are the different types of things that we might categorize as being, as having impact on community. These are ways that we could get at measuring it. What do you think? And I'm going to show you a bit of the response to our what do you think question in a minute. But the next process then was to try to come at it from a different way, because it wasn't very satisfying, to say the least. And so we did some more in-depth interviewing. We did some focus group interviews. We talked then to members as opposed to just managers and board members, to take it to a level that was a little less engaged and perhaps not as well as informed. Thank you. This is the end of a long day for me too. And then finally, our goal was to test it in a survey format. So we start off with the in-depth questions and then trying to move towards survey format. Because like the other groups that are involved in the Measuring the Cooperative Difference project county-wide, we're trying to come up with a tool, an instrument, something that an individual credit union can use, might choose to use on an annual or every other year basis, and can use it as a basis then for benchmarking its improvement towards change, maybe might be decline, in a variety of different areas. I guess the one thing that I would say that's different about ours, and I'm thinking primarily about the presentation earlier this morning, we haven't connected it to the cooperative principles, we haven't connected it to a prescriptive set of behaviors. We have simply looked at the literature and have identified a whole range of ways in which behavior by a credit union might have an impact on a community. And so it's not, it's different in that way. And I said to Linda earlier today, maybe we should have started with more prescriptive behaviors. And maybe we'll return to that point. But until this point in time, it's more an examination of what people are doing, as opposed to this rather, perhaps a more ideal vision of what we should be doing. So here's an example of one of the indicators, the community economic development. And Linda has provided us with examples of a whole range of types of activities that have varying degrees of impact on the community around them. So we were thinking economic development generally, community economic development, and under that category then would have things like the types of financial services that were provided, the range of community development programs, and this would include things like affordable housing and microlending, whether they're procuring locally or whether putting their investments into the community and so on. And then the ways to get at this, and these, again, just to remind you, these are the questions that we had designed to ask managers and board members. So to begin with, it was, does your credit union do this? Not so much a question of what's the outcome of your credit union doing this. So here's the range of questions that we asked the managers and the board members and a group of members that sit on member relations committees. And the member relations committees are similar to the district councils that Linda was referring to with Affinity. Because Advantage is a little bit smaller, what they've done every time there's a merger, they've left a member relations committee in place where previously there was an existing board. And that was their effort in order to maintain the connection with the community. And the practice is also similar to Affinity in that those member relations committees control a set of funds on an annual basis to invest or spend in their community however it is that they determine they wish to. So they have some control over their actions and they have total control over their decisions over a finite set of funds in order to demonstrate however they wish the presence of their credit union in addition to the provision of services and other types of financial activities. So here's Advantage. We started out with them. These are the sets of questions that we did. And here's some of our preliminary findings. And I guess the major finding that we found was that they were able to articulate very clearly, and again, they is board members and managers, they're able to articulate very clearly what it is they do. And I think this exercise for them was helpful because it got them thinking about what it was they were doing and whether or not it was valuable. But what they really weren't able to do in any way was to talk about what the impact was. So these are some of the bits of information that came out of the interviews that we were doing. It was good for them to be in the community, their donations were providing contributions.
For him or her, but someone who thinks about, what question are worth answering. And obviously you have a lot of questions that are worth answering in your research. So we'll do some questions. Try to keep your questions short and to the point, and then short and to the point answers, so we can put more questions. So I got Sonia, you, and you. So to start with, Sonia, you want to?
Yeah, it will be
Rambling a bit.
a little bit. Yeah, I'll try not to ramble. But first of all, congratulations to Affinity. And as I was listening to what you had to say, I'm thinking, why do we need to measure anything? I mean, they say, they just send her around and we'll know what they're doing. You cannot take 2 years off and we'll all be fine. So you already measure, you already know we're making a difference, you're already doing what others are not. You are giving loans that externalities are all there, so we already know, or you already know. So I'm not even sure what it is you're trying to get at, quite frankly. What is it that you need to prove to whom? So I'm totally back at square one, thinking, what are you actually trying to do? So I'd like to answer that, and in that answer you could include mergers. Why are they happening? And what are you doing about them? And to your question on governance and are people affected, time use came to my mind as I was listening to you. Time use research, which is follow people and ask them every hour to log what they're doing. And then you go and you see what they were up to for a month, and you see how many things they participated in and where they were involved and so on. So there's time use research, and maybe the data is already collected because Canadian researchers are in this field. Andy Harvey in Halifax has done a lot in Canada, so I don't know what provinces he was in and what data was collected when, but it could be your members who have done time use logs already. So that makes
Okay, you got 3 questions in.
Yeah.
We can start.
And a recommendation.
Who wants to?
Let Linda start.
Okay. I'll start with mergers because it fits with the answer to your first question. mergers are not going to slow down anytime soon, primarily because of the regulation. For any credit union under 100 million, the regulation and the compliance needs are horrendous, so they're going to look for a partner. Affinity is one of the alternatives that they will have in Saskatchewan. Because Saskatchewan is the hot button of the economy in Canada and on the world map, our growth is not going to slow anytime soon either. So both of those things are going to continue to happen. In fact, I have 4 credit unions that will go to their members this fall to join us January 1st. And there are more knocking on the door. So that's going to continue to happen. What happens is, and I'll say this in my outside voice, but if you repeat it, you're in big trouble. If every credit union in Canada felt about community the way Affinity did, as Legacy Saskatoon Credit Union, I wouldn't need Kira. But I need Kira because I don't want to treat my new family members any different than I treat my old ones. And I've had some time to build in the belief that what you do in the community is what makes you different. Credit unions that are smaller than us that come to us, they think it's fine, it's sponsoring the local rink, and it's not. It's doing things that change the lives of members. So it takes a while to get everybody on the same page. So I spend half of my life, or if you ask George Keeter, he spends half his life defending what we do in the community. So when I walk into our budgeting process, for example, and I say, I want $650,000 to spend in community, the rest say, why? We are so well known in the community, Linda, that we don't need to do this anymore. We're not going to get anything out of that investment. So that's why Lou's going to bring me these magic numbers.
Hold on, I've got 2 people, I got
I want to add a postscript to Linda's comment that our other credit union is one of those 4. So soon we won't have 2. We got to get back out there real quick.
Yeah, I can only dream of having a credit union like Affinity in Northern Ontario. It was a great presentation, and I think it was Jessica who mentioned looking at spillover research, and it occurred to me as I was watching the presentation and also the searching for questions, I wondered how extensively it had been with the spillover research, but you don't really have to answer that question. I just wanted to offer again, one of my colleagues did research on the spillover effects of worker ownership in our community. And one of the things that they did, which I thought was really interesting and might provide some interesting data for what you're doing, is they went out and spoke to, I think it was about 25 to 30 different other community groups in the community. And they asked them to assess and to give feedback on the spillover impact of worker ownership, which in this case, the spillover impact of credit unions. And I think that would be it would certainly be a very interesting study to see how other community organizations perceive the work of the credit union and the value of it and so on. And it might, might give some ideas around things that might be overlooked or whatever and also ideas about measurement of it. I just throw that in.
Well, just in quick response, my guess is that the other community organizations like Flint Development Corporation is very knowledgeable about what Affinity is doing and why it's good.
Right.
But it's the the general member down the street who isn't as aware. And we wanted to ask questions that tested level of awareness about, like, did you know that Affinity Credit Union supports literacy programs? Did you know that Affinity does X, Y, and Z? And the marketing department said, that's a waste of time. Nobody ever knows. So I'm thinking, okay, there's a message there if nobody ever knows. But the thing is that all those people who don't know are the ones who may eventually sit on the board and decide it doesn't matter.
I've got 5 people that are reading this, I'm sorry.
We can't engage in a dialogue.
I want more people to engage. Sir?
So I'm really excited that you're trying to map the externalities that CSR from credit unions, I guess, promotes. Just maybe a suggestion or a question is this, in the survey you did, you're asking importance for all of these options. Maybe as a control variable, you might want to ask performance. Like if they actually feel like Affinity Credit Union is doing well performing in its certain programs and certain aspects, because if they don't think they're performing well, they might say that it's more important, or if they say that they're performing very well, they might not care about the importance. And so you can get like a grid, and it'll show what's important and what's...
Yeah, good idea. That's something that we couldn't do in this one, because they're already asking questions about the performance of products and services. So, but just come back to you, what we wanted to do was to put out a survey that would ask questions about, are you aware or do you know that, and how important is it to you that they do such and such.
Mm-hmm.
So to get at exactly level of understanding as well as degree of importance.
Yeah, well, just to add to that, I'm just, when you ask someone how important, like an individual who's not necessarily engaged in community aspects, if you ask them about products and rates and services, and then you follow up, if you asked it after, whether they agree that like supporting your community or doing social service programs or community economic development is important, they might end up saying that they think that products and services and rates are way more important than anything else. And that's just the way our society is, and I'm sure somewhat in Saskatchewan, with a like shift towards individualistic perspectives, you might find that there's slightly lower on the scale. So you might have to control for that when you're doing the analysis. Just some thoughts.
I guess just a couple of comments. We run a community involvement survey, Credit Union Central Canada, which asks credit unions about what they're doing in the community. So it might be interesting when you develop this tool to start thinking about maybe integrating elements of that down the road. It's just an observation, and also.
So this is one that goes to the credit unions.
Goes to the credit unions themselves. So if they had the tool, maybe it would be feeding into that. It would be nice to have that sort of influence. It's just something to pop in mind. And then my question is really to Linda, I guess. I'm really interested in how you're structured, thinking about your government structure. What was the discussions that led to that? Because it's not universal, obviously. It's kind of unique. So what were the ingredients that got you there versus other credit unions?
We changed our governance structure in the first merger between Saskatoon Credit Union and two smaller credit unions that joined us. And I said at that time, our challenge as we grow is always to remain small. And so how can we do that? And it's not enough just to have a member relations committee. They have to have some meat, they have to have a job to do, and they have to be engaged. So we walked down the road of a district council. And I guess that was 6 years ago, and I can remember people telling me that this will be way too expensive for the credit union. It's not going to be worth your while. And today our governance model is less expensive than most of our peers. And we had almost 700 people come out to AGMs, which isn't where I want it to be more than that, but that's good. So that tells me that it's working.
So I wanted to ask you to elaborate.
Our annual meeting.
Annual general meeting.